We're glad to have you back now. The chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, Mr. Olani Yusuf, stressed that African economic transformation relies on strengthening regional collaboration, removing trade barriers, and accelerating cross-border investment. Mr. Yusuf made the remarks at the 31st Nigerian Economic Summit, NES 31 in Abuja, urging the continent to move beyond rhetoric towards deepening integration and mobilizing regional capital for development. He said Nigeria's and Africa's economic growth depends on collaboration through shared market talents and resources, adding that without this, long-term prosperity would remain elusive. Mr. Yusuf highlighted the African Continental Free Trade Area as a historic chance to unlock regional value chains and increase Africa's GDP by $140 billion by 2035 if properly implemented. Professor Ike Ife is a development economist. He was very active at that meeting last week. I was also there in person. Prof, good to have you this Monday afternoon on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Prof, you know, a lot of conversations at the just concluded NES 31. But talking about regional collaboration to boost African growth, and that really comes to me at this time. We're talking about the AFCFTA. How does that come to you, considering the conversations we had at that gathering?
No, I mean, that's the way to go. I remember I weighed in on that on Wednesday morning when I spoke. We look at opportunities. One of the opportunities Nigeria has is the AFCFTA as a new trade destination. But I made very clear that if you are going into AFCFTA, consider the fact that you have two different sectors. You have the trade in services and you have trade in goods. We are very well ready in trade in services. All we just want is government clear the stage for us, get us, up to speed in mutual recognition across those modes, mode 1, mode 2, mode 3. Then, make sure that all the regulatory burdens are out of the way as the chairman was speaking. So that's fine. And if you notice, we have our banking and financial sector all over Africa anyway. Our digital platforms and digital economy are doing well. We're even digital trade champion for Africa. And then in the music sector and film and creative and cultural industry, we're there. So those don't need much because government hasn't even been supporting them anyway. But the thing is that we have to draw a distinction between our capacity to trade in Africa under the AFCFTA and our lack of capacity to do trade in goods. And that's where the biggest embarrassment is going to come from. It's not going to be business as usual. You're not going to move raw material to Africa. You're not going to export raw material to other African countries to process for you. And quite fortuitously, the president has accented to a 30% mandatory value addition on our raw materials. So that now says, yes, what's the new agenda? The agenda is comprehensive industrialization so that you can produce products that can be sold in that market. At the moment, you just don't. You don't just launch your container after 1 year and then all that. We have to get serious about this because the reason why all the growth you have been talking about, whether from World Bank or GDP figures from NBA, it doesn't, all these things are macroeconomic stability. All of them are promoting growth. Growth is coming, but those growth are not inclusive. They're not creating jobs. It's not the service sector that will give you the kind of jobs that you need. You need food. The World Bank recommendation says, number one, fight food inflation. That's the bane, food inflation. And we are fighting on this on the back of an import-dependent economy. I can't forget how many times I've spoken about this in our interview with you. Because you have an import-dependent economy, every conceivable global macroeconomic headwind will affect you. It doesn't matter whether it's COVID-19 or supply chain disruption or American subprime property crisis of 2009. It doesn't matter what it is. Anything global will affect you. Otherwise, why would we shake when Russia is fighting with Ukraine? We have oil, they have oil. We have gas, they have gas. But because we're import dependent, the 40% control of the gas supply to Europe was disrupted by Russia. So now we are inheriting the high cost of production in the European don't tackle import dependency and stop this embarrassment of exporting raw materials, which means you're exporting jobs and importing poverty, then we're never going to make it. Even our projections of having $1 trillion economy is not going to happen, because the services alone will not give you that thing. You have to get into serious industrialization so that you can generate the employment and happiness, and then poverty reduction and massive exploitation of your natural resources, and take advantage of the devaluation of your currency. Nations devalue when they have something to export. They do it deliberately. They tune their manufacturing capacity, get everything ready. They're going to put, then they devalue. So suddenly the whole world will want to buy your product because they are extremely cheap. So in the meantime, in dependency of that devaluation, your goods will penetrate the export market, and then you gradually begin to return to a stronger currency. That's how it's done. Any other thing, we must be joking, honestly.
I like that breakdown, Prof. I really must tell you that I like that, and it's good to take it up from there. But the issue of trade barriers and cross-border investments is something that really comes into my mind. How do we address these issues of trade barriers? It's been like that. Currency issues, I know you've touched on some of them, but what can we do really practically to accelerate this trade and, you know, make sure that we harness this? There's a projection that we could increase Africa's GDP by $140 billion by 2035.
We could even be more. But I always say, let's make that distinction between, because investment, trade in investment in all the other areas are not as onerous as trade in goods. Because we have in ECOWAS, we have free movement of goods protocol, which we are even more advanced than Africa. That's what they are coming to do. We have single passport, we have ISDN, interstate road transit scheme, we have a brown card, you can drive. We have single passport. The same passport is used all over this region. So we have it. Free movement of goods, services, capital, and right of establishment. And Africa is just waking up to come to do what we have achieved for many years. Then we have investment. We have investment policy, and we have the trade investment code. So that makes up. And then in the area of union, customs union, we have advanced substantially. We have a common trade policy, although Nigeria hasn't done theirs still today. We still haven't got a trade policy now, but they've implemented, and we have the common external tariff we have implemented. So which are 4 bands, band 1, 2, 3, and 4, and other. But the only thing remaining for us on that area is to now have a common pool of fund where you collect all those taxes with VAT, whatever, and then we share it among ourselves. That's the only one left. In terms of currency, we have advanced. We were almost there when France and Cote d'Ivoire torpedoed it. And then we have now got a new target of 2027. So all of those, but even in the dependency of that single currency, we have Pan-African payments and settlement system, which allows us to just execute the trade without a cost to dollar. So normal trade and buying and selling things, all of that can happen in local currencies, but that doesn't address government-to-government transaction, because government-to-government transaction is, we cannot simplify it and bring it into no. Then that doesn't also deal with huge movement of capital, like if $2 billion had to move or $1 billion has to move or two. So, but at least you have a starting point. And then when you join it to the currency swap with China, the likes of China, and then the holding 5% of our reserves in yuan, all of those add up to remove the hemorrhage of going to $2 and backwards again, where you lose almost 20%. So all of those things are in view. But the thing is, what have you got to trade? Because when you come to actual trading goods, the goods, 90% of the goods go through seaport. Now, where is your trade hub? We're supposed to have Badagry trade hub. We're supposed to have Lekki. We're supposed to have major trade hubs in Africa, in our region. But see what is going on there. And then see how the fiscal authorities have emasculated all other rural sectors. It's not agriculture that can breed under the under the unstable fiscal policy and lack of fiscal efficiency. It's not the marine economy. If you want to transport cocoa today, if cocoa, 100 tons of cocoa from Ghana costs only $7,000, in Nigeria it costs $40,000. We are not facilitating trade in Nigeria. Our customs does not facilitate trade. They're just out there to get money. And then that doesn't help you much in facilitating trade. Look at, since 2012, I was the UK trade advisor to Nigerian government. I did all this accession of Nigeria to WTO, worked with 46 agencies, trade-related agencies, then did the one single window. We haven't implemented single window even till today, 13 years down the line. But now the CG of Customs says it's going to be done or is being done. I also did a work for World Bank in Lagos Abidjan Transit Corridor on authorized economic operator, recommended that it should be done for Nigeria, between Nigeria and Benin to cap pilot. Nigeria hasn't done anything. The CG, when it went to Algeria, said that we are going to do it now, after 13 years. So, and then because you cannot clear your goods within 24 hours under the single window, Nigerians go to Cotonou, they go to Togo, Lomé, to go and clear their goods. From Cotonou, you have from Cotonou, you have 400,000 second-hand cars that come into Nigeria, simply because of the problem that they have when they are trying to clear it. And then they now pay the duty to them and then take it through the porous border into the country. How do you expect the car assembly companies in Nigeria to do well when they are facing 400,000 second-hand cars? And look at the money that is involved. If it costs you minimum of $10,000, you have $4 billion out there. Another point is this on trade facilitation. WTO says that lack of trade facilitation could cost a country up to 15% of their total trade volume. Our Nigerian trade volume is about $120 billion in and out. 15% of that is about $18 billion to $20 billion. Who bears that cost is the private sector. So are you helping the private sector when they are losing this kind of money? Can you raise investment of $18 billion in a year? But that is how you punish the private sector. We're not enabling them. So what I did when I talked about this in the NESG, I said, we have no choice than to now pull our socks and deliver an industrialization strategy that is pursuant to this 30% mandatory value addition Tinubu has given us. But how do you do that? You have to do it on the back of an export-led growth strategy. It has to be export-led growth strategy. That is, China got over 400 million people out of poverty. Indonesia, Malaysia, South Korea, all of them took hundreds of millions of people out of poverty simply because they had export-led growth strategy. When you have products being exported, the entire backward integration becomes a reality. The entire import substitution becomes a reality. Because when you have products to export, it means that the people who are producing it at the back end are competent and competitive, and it means that infrastructure required to produce is there. Then industrial infrastructure is there to process. We don't have industrial infrastructure here. What we have are 35 free trade zones, and they're all sitting down waiting for people to bring their money and develop their free trade for them. Why is government borrowing, which is about fiscal efficiency, why is their borrowing not addressing industrialization infrastructure? Why? We borrow for all reasons, manner of reasons, outside the law, what the law says you should borrow for. So when you have time, we'll talk about fiscal efficiency, because that is where the trouble lies. That we are, okay, now today we have good headroom now. Our debt to GDP ratio has come down from over 50% to now 39%. So we have every reason to borrow more. But are you borrowing responsibly? Are you borrowing transparently? Are you accountable in your borrowing? Are you prudent? Where is the fiscal efficiency factor? Is your debt sustainable? All of these questions are answered by an extant law, fiscal responsibility in 2007, but they are not following that act. And as long as we are not doing it, it will continue to be a cycle of deceit and a cycle of fiscal inefficiency. So we can do better. We can do more.
All right, Prof. I must thank you so much. That's our time. Interesting conversation with you as always. And I thank you so much for bringing up those hard questions that we really need to get answers for. Borrowing should be responsible indeed. And fiscal responsibility is key. I must thank you so much, Prof.
But I have something else, though, because...
Go ahead. Take 1 minute.
Once we agree that we are going to pursue industrialization, what then happens is that all the macroeconomic policies must now connect to an industrialization agenda led by the fiscal policy. It means that the trade policy will go and finalize their new trade policy and make sure it lines up. The investment policy will have to line up. The borrowing and lending, all that policies have to focus. Monetary policy must address industrialization policy. So all of them will have to converge. And then you now have a handshake. Then we are in business. We have something to produce, and the entire economy is responding to an industrial agenda. That's how I see it.
Thank you so much, Professor Ike Ife, development economist. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Such a pleasure.
All right, Prof. Well, let's look at trading activities today at the Exchange Limited. And joining me is an equities trader with Rostrum Investment and Securities Limited, Mr. Dele Sanusi. Mr. Sanusi, good afternoon, and how are you today? All right, then we'll try to connect with Mr. Sanusi. Let's see some foreign stories and see what is going on outside our shores now. Mali has announced a new visa rule targeting U.S. citizens, requiring a bond of up to $10,000 for business and tourist visas. The move is seen as a direct response for Washington's own visa-bound policy, originally introduced under President Trump's administration. According to Mali's foreign ministry, the decision mirrors a